Hello everyone, it's Old Guardian here. You may have noticed that I regularly make best decks to climb to legend videos on this YouTube channel, and I've received questions, okay, how do you come up with that list? And in this video I'm going to explain that. So this video both showcases how I built the best decks to legend list, and also it showcases how to use HSReplay.net in general in order to find good decks. In order to be able to make use of this advice, you would have to have the premium subscription to the website. I have a premium subscription to this site because, well, I built a lot of decks, so I need all the data that I can get. If you're a free user, you can't do all of these things, and the site will be of much less value to you, unfortunately. But anyway, trying to figure out the best decks to climb to legend, and HSReplay is the site with the data. So here we are, but then what? First I'm going to the meta tab, and the very first thing that I do when I try to come up with that list is I go to popularity. It's gated behind the paywall, so you can't access this without the premium subscription, so sorry, not much you can do about that one. But anyway, in the popularity tab I get a view of, okay, how popular are various decks and how popular they are at various ranks. So I can get an overview of, okay, like this Demon Hunter deck, how much is played on Diamond 5. Diamond 5 is a rank floor, so there might be a bit more experimentation going on there, but as people go to 4, 3, 2, 1, the competition stiffens, and so the better decks, theoretically at least, come out on top. So I want to check out what's being played in Diamond 1 for people who want to climb to legend, and at the time I'm recording this video, of course this specific data is just going to be obsolete very quickly. It's not about the data, this is about the methodology. But when I'm recording this video, then on Diamond 1 Highlander Hunter seems to be really popular. Then at this point you need to pay attention to the time frame. So this is currently showing all the data from the balance patch, but that's not really good, because the first couple of days at least from a new balance patch, they're really experimental and lots of things can be different. So I don't want to use data from the entire balance patch. I can only do this like a few days after the balance patch at the earliest, so that I can get the couple of first days away from the data. So, but I can look at last 3 days, and this should give me a little bit more insight. I can also look at last 1 day, and I can compare between the last 3 days and last 1 day view to see if there's any spottable trends that I can find. But overall, the last 3 days, looking at Diamond 1, so I'm looking at, okay, what's popular? And Highlander Hunter, at the time I'm recording this, seems to be really popular. Another thing that I pay attention to is the trend. Like, successful decks are being played more and more as ranks go up. So Highlander Hunter starts at 8% at Diamond 5, goes up to 20% at Diamond 1. Now that's a great candidate for a deck to play to legend, because people are playing it more and more as they get closer to legend, so they are being successful with the deck. Similarly, Tempo Demon Hunter is on a rising curve. Galagon Secret Rogue, a little bit of rising curve, not quite as much. Highlander Mage, it's almost the same throughout from 5 to Diamond 1. And then, interesting, Galagon Priest, this is like the 5th most popular deck here, so it's quite popular on Diamond 1. Isn't that one of the best decks to play to legend then? But maybe not necessarily, because here we see the opposite curve, so it's much more popular at the rank floor, and then its popularity diminishes as it goes closer to legend. So that tends to indicate that this deck is not that successful in climbing, because people are giving up on it and switching to other decks that are more effective at climbing. And decks that are effective at climbing are not necessarily only the most popular decks. Sometimes you can see a little bit further down the list also, like Enrage Warrior, 2% at Diamond 5 here, climbing steadily up to 2.6% at Diamond 1. So Enrage Warrior is not a very popular deck, but it seems that it's a deck that increases in popularity as you get closer to legend, which could indicate that it could be an effective deck for climbing. So this is my first stop. This gives me a preliminary candidate list. Okay, so I'm going to check out Highlander Hunter, Tempo Demon Hunter, Secret Rogues in a bit more detail. I'm also going to check the Galagon Priest, but I'm already now wary of Galagon Priest maybe being a bit of a trap. So now I have some preliminary candidates, but I'm still looking for more. So next I'm going into the matchups tab, and then I'm going to sort it by the expected win rate. So this is another perspective in finding which decks are successful. As the default settings it's bronze through gold, and here like Murloc Paladin, Pure Paladin seem to be pretty good, but once I hit diamond through legend filter on, I can see that Pure Paladin simply disappears, and Murloc Paladin is something that I need to pay a little bit of attention on. I can also check diamond 41, so a little bit more on the climbing ranks, and then I can also check legend. I like to check these different rank ranges a little bit, specifically diamond through legend, diamond 41 and legend, and a little bit try to see, okay, how are decks performing. Like Murloc Paladin seems to have disappeared by legend, so that makes me a little bit wary now of Murloc Paladin, but it's still something that I need to check out. So by now we have seen that Highlander Hunter seems to be the clear #1 favorite, Demon Hunter seems to be the clear #2 favorite. There's a bunch of interesting decks like Pirate Warriors, Spell Druids, Bomb Warriors, and Rogues. And then there are some decks that seem to be quite popular, seem to perform well at some point, but seem to fall off in performance, like Murloc Paladin and Galagrond Priest. So when I have my preliminary candidates list, then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the decks tab. And then in Decks tab I also need to filter the results a little bit, so we start with Diamond through Legend, also look at Diamond 41, look at Legend a little bit, and we sort it by last 3 days. Because I want an up-to-date view, and last 3 days provides me with that. So now we have a list of the most popular decks here, with the sorting by games, and we can also sort by win rate. But when you sort by win rate, then another problem appears, because like, hey, there's a Highlander Hunter with 66.7% win rate at 250 games. So this win rate is extremely unreliable because the sample size is so low. So what I really want to do is I want to look at the decks class by class. So starting with the Demon Hunters. Alright, that's a lot of different Demon Hunter decks, but the win rates of these are pretty good, but the sample sizes are pretty small. But as I scroll down a little bit, there's actually a Demon Hunter deck with 15,000 games sample size and 59.4% win rate. And that seems like something that's far more reliable than 62.8% at 600 games. But we might be able to recommend something with a smaller sample size too. It needs to take a good look at the decks. So for example, here in Demon Hunters, I can see those are the cards that are being used. So I can see, for example, the OK Beaming Sidekick has become ubiquitous. It has proven to be a very effective tech. There are some other interesting tech cards. There's one with 5,000 game sample size that uses Guardian Orc Merchant. Hey, that's an interesting tech choice. How is that performing? Then I look into this, okay, are these tech choices in these decks something that's worth exploring? And then I can see that Guardian Orc Merchant is not doing too well. It is actually tied with Beaming Sidekick in Diamond through Legend. Then I can also check the Legend stats. Try to find maybe a little bit higher quality games. And in these stats, Guardian Orc Merchant starts to clearly underperform compared to Beaming Sidekick. So Guardian Orc Merchant might look like, okay, that might be something. I guess this is probably not the tech. So let's move away from that one, and then we can take a look at some other tech choices that are being used. For example, Vulpera Scoundrel seems to be fairly popular. It's in many of these lists with low sample sizes. It's not in this most popular list. So we can check that one has 800 games. A bit small still, but let's take a look. How is Vulpera Scoundrel performing? And Vulpera Scoundrel is not performing very well. It seems to be an outlier here. Like, first we have the steady curve, win rate dropping. Some cards are a bit better than others. Of course, there's still considerable uncertainty with a sample size of below 1000 games. And Vulpera Scoundrel doesn't look too promising. So then I take a look at it a couple of more times and I find the same result again. And then I come to the conclusion, okay, I'm not going to recommend a deck with Vulpera Scoundrel as a tech card. So are there any other meaningful tech choices? It doesn't look like there's that much other things. So the Tempo Demon Hunter recommendation would go to this one. 15,000 games, good win rate. The others that are performing better than it is have low sample sizes and there's no single apparent reason that would clearly make them better. So there's no particular reason to recommend something else than this one, which is tested and proven. So I start building my shortlist, like this Tempo Demon Hunter. It's going on my shortlist now. And I go through this class by class, so next I'm looking at Druid, and then okay, that's Druid. There's some win rates over here. Malygos Druid deck, okay, there's a Malygos list, just 200 games played, so even though there's a fairly sizable win rate there, then the sample size is so low that that's not very reliable. Whereas there are Spell Druid decks with 1900 games, 1400 games, 4,400 games. What is the most popular Malygos Druid is doing like? So 2,200 games, that's only 53% win rate. So when looking at the decks that have a little bit larger sample size, it seems that Spell Druids are performing better than Malygos Druids. Although here we come across one common phenomenon also, which is misrepresentation of the decks. Like this Spell Druid over here, 56% win rate, 4,200 games, this is actually a Malygos Druid list. Well, how good is Malygos? Is Malygos contributing a lot to this deck winning games? And then we look at the deck performance, and Malygos is at the very bottom, as is the Emerald Explorer. Well, typically very expensive cards that come in late game can have slightly lower drawn win rates than cards that are early game cards, but then we compare to stuff like Ysera, and Ysera is also a very late game card and it's performing much better than the Malygos. So I'm a little bit skeptical now about that Malygos list, and then I'm looking at the regular Spell Druid list, which seems to be performing at a slightly better rate, and in this list Ysera is actually at the bottom, so it's not even certain whether Ysera is a contributing factor or if the deck could be built without one, but I cannot find a non-Ysera version, so I don't just make stuff up. I would sometimes like to switch some cards, because it seems to me that okay, this deck could be made better, but if I don't have the data, I don't do that for these best decks videos. For the best decks videos, I always try to find just the decks that are actually proven to perform, even if I believe that somehow they could be made better. And another aspect of the deck performance is, okay, how has that performance come by? So we can check at this win rates graph and we can see that this is performing at a very, very solid level. The performance just doesn't change much. So this is a reliable looking deck. This is the most reliable looking deck of all the Druid decks. It's a Spell Druid deck. The Malygos Druid deck seem to be performing at a slightly lower level, so I am going to recommend a Spell Druid deck, and I'm going to recommend this deck, because this deck has a good sample size, it has reliable performance, and it just seems like the most reliable choice you can make out of all the Druid decks. So this is how I build my shortlist. I have an idea of the archetypes that I want to be represented, then I look for those archetypes, and I also keep an eye on something special, something that I would have missed on the meta tab, and I go through all of these class by class. I open the candidates for myself here in tabs, and then I actually start rearranging these tabs to look for the correct order of these decks. So which one am I going to recommend as the best pick, which am I going to recommend as something a little bit weaker? And in order to do that, I need to identify what the meta is like, so what's popular, what's less popular, and how are all of these decks going to interact with each other. And typically the matchups tab is going to give me a lot of information about that, because once I have decks with a decent sample size, then there's also probably somewhat decent sample size on various matchups, and then I can see, okay, which decks is this performing well against which decks a little bit less well. In this particular case, because this is a Demon Hunter deck that was nerfed during its existence, I can also see whether the deck has been around for a while or whether it's a new deck. If it's a new deck, then it's easier to trust the matchup data because it's all recent, but if it's an older deck, then the matchup data can go back 30 days. So then I have to interpret the data a little bit more. But through this matchup tab and through the overview tab, where you can also see how the deck is performing against various classes, I can come up with an idea on, okay, which decks are strong against which decks. And then I know what the meta is looking like now, and then I can look into this information, okay, which decks are actually performing well against the current meta decks. They're probably going to become more popular, so I can try to make a prediction on how the meta is going to develop, and based on the matchup data and the prediction on how the meta is going to develop based on that, I can try to make a prediction on, okay, what's going to be good in the next coming days, when there's going to be small changes in the popularity figures. And then some decks based on their matchups will perform better and some decks a little bit worse. And then I just rearrange my candidates until I'm happy with the relative strength of the field. for what I predict the meta is going to be in the near future. And when that is all said and done, it's time for me to grab some screenshots, put them in a PowerPoint presentation, grab some deck codes, put them in Notepad, and record a video where I talk about each of the decks a little bit and put the deck codes in the YouTube description, and off we go. So overall, the way that I built these best decks videos, it's a combination of art and science. It's not just pure database grinding, because I don't have that sort of database access. But what I have is an HSReplay premium subscription that I then use to look into whatever data is available there, and try to use that to both predict what's going to happen in the future and rank the decks accordingly. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the show, please click the like button and subscribe to my channel for more.